Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's happening, guys? Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and myself have been checking out the new album from Portuguese multi-instrumentalist Neil. Yes, that's right, Duncan. Multi-instrumentalist. You didn't know about this, did you?
Don't read the blurb, Dave. I never read the. This is the thing. I don't read. I was elected to lead, not to read.
Well, Neil's new album, Ailment, will be released on October 16th via Raging Planet and Planet K. Nearly 7 years after the release of his debut album, Interstice? Don't know how you pronounce that. Interstice. Multi-instrumentalist and producer Pedro Mao, ex-Neil Down in Wells Valley, is back with a new studio effort for his solo project, Neil. Ailment once again features the vocal contribution of his Wells Valley colleague and Concealment guitarist vocalist Philippe Correa. Again, apologies if I pronounce any of this shit wrong.
We are Scottish, which means we're at a disadvantage when it comes to pronouncing anything that isn't Smith or Joe
or McTavish.
Yeah, any MCs and we're fucking right in there.
Yeah. Now, although Neil's first album came out 7 years ago, or his first album came out 7 years ago, I only heard it for the first time last year when it was re-released. It was released as I think it was re-recorded or remastered, I think. And I was pretty impressed with the first album. I was a little gutted that I was just finding out about Neil like just last year when they've been on the go for a long time. But and then I find out it's pretty much one guy with a little help from Philippe on vocals. And I have to say, I'm not usually a fan of one-man bands, Kyle excluded, obviously. But
good save, Dave. Good save. I think you got away with it.
Up and leave.
Don't think he noticed.
I think a lot of these types of projects, the one kind of one-man band thing, sometimes for me they kind of lack a bit of kind of overall the kind of fluidity of a band. It can sound a wee bit like pieced together.
It's quality control, I think, isn't it? More than anything, especially if they're doing production work as well on it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I didn't get that at all. Even on his first album, I would not have guessed it was two guys that was doing everything. And that's something that completely carries over to Ailment. This album sounds, again, very cohesive. The musicianship is fantastic, and the production is weighty, and it's got a bit of grit to it, as the last album did. The other thing that carried over for me on this one was it's a very infectious album. It's an album that has like predominantly a very progressive feel to it. The riffs and rhythms, they conjure up the vibes of your like Gojiras and your Meshuggahs, but it's kind of interspliced with like these moments of almost like kind of abrasive hardcore, and there's a bit, real kind of hefty kind of grooves to it. They kind of put me in mind a little bit of a band called A Life Once Lost. I don't know if you remember them.
Yep.
From way back in the day. They had that kind of like the huge kind of off-kilter riffs, but they were kind of bolstered with that kind of hardcore edge. But on some of the more kind of straight-up metal parts of this album, like if you look at like parts of Arai or the first half of Raptorial, where they go a little bit more 4/4, it did have an almost kind of like Sepultura type feel to it. And vocally, also Philippe does have a bit of a Max Cavalera thing going on, but probably more range than Max, and
definitely more range than Max.
Less lyrics about Hootie and the Blowfish. For you two guys, you obviously never heard Neil before. What did you guys make of this, hearing this on kind of like first time round? What was your experience with Neil like? Duncan, you go for it.
I mean, how dare you presume that I've never heard Neil before?
Well, you didn't know it was one guy for a start, so I'm assuming you haven't heard them.
You can listen to a band and not know how many members are in them, and then not listen to them for 7 years, and then come back and find out it's only one guy. I mean, that is a possible scenario, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Pains me to say you're right. I'd never heard of that. And up until right at the beginning here, when my eyes raised up, when you, I, unlike you, don't mind a one-man band. That's because I was a vocalist, and vocalists like to consider themselves a one-man band. It's the ego, I think. No, like
I don't.
I mean, Nine Inch Nails are my favourite band, and that is ostensibly, a one-man band. Maybe less so nowadays, but primarily at his peak, he was pretty much doing everything himself. I have a lot of time for this. We were kind of... It was interesting just before we hit record. Some of the notes that were just kind of batting backwards and forwards appeared to be on each other's lists. We're either spending far too much time together, which is possible, even in a kind of post-COVID world, or they're just kind of obvious comparisons, and that's not a bad thing. What I really like about Neil, specifically on this album, is that whilst, yes, it does have kind of groove-laden songs, and does definitely have, at times, full-on Meshuggah production, at no point when I'm listening to it do I feel like they're trying to sound like Gojira, or they're trying to sound like Meshuggah. They are emulating parts of it for sure, and you can make that comparison from a particular riff or whatever, but the songs themselves are not, this is the Meshuggah song or this is the Gojira song. So I really like that about them. I think there's a really good mix on the album as well, so just when you feel like you're getting a handle on maybe what he's aiming for sound wise, the next song comes along and it is a bit faster tempo, it's right down the middle, it's got a kind of really heavy thrash kind of groove to it. And then the next song comes in, and then it's kind of not quite polyrhythms, but it's that kind of off-kilter timing, and much more kind of chunkier, slower riffs. And I think the dexterity shown on that, specifically on the songwriting, is the key to the enjoyment of this album. It's about 45 minutes in length, and as I was basically coming down to record this, I was on my second full listen through as I tried the unenviable task of unknitting 3 necklaces that my daughter has put together, and it's become my hell. But I basically listened to the album twice through, and the reason I got it twice through is when it finished and then there was a bit of silence, I thought this is a long build up to the next song, and I was like, oh no, the fucking album's done. Right back on again. So it left me wanting more. I think that's a good thing to be in, especially on an album that clocks in at this length. Vocally, dude does sound like Max Cavalera. I don't think the guy's going to be upset if you say he sounds like Max Cavalera, but he adds the exact level of weight that you need behind this, and what it kind of proved to me time and time again, and also what Max Cavalera has proved to be time and time again, is his voice can jump genres as well, kind of comfortably. At times he can be a bit monotone, not the singer of Neil, but it can be translated quite well within the genre of metal to different styles. That works exactly the same here. Vocally it jumps all over the place in a nice sort of way whilst kind of remaining true, and I'm glad that you've kind of pointed out that is an actual, he's got someone in to do vocals, because if I'd found that this guy could do the vocals as well as everything else, Dave, I'd be hecka pissed off, and I'm not at the moment. I think I think it's really good. Production's brilliant on it, nice, crisp, clear, powerful in parts, like really, really, really chunky. Yeah, it's just a great album. I mean, this is one of these ones where I would love to lean more into certain things. For me, I'll echo a lot of what you were saying. I think things like Watchful, great song. Arai, to me, is like the first song Quam kicked in, I thought, yes, pretty cool. But it was when Arai kicked in, I was like, alright, here we go. And it just, there isn't a bad song on here. Are these the most original sounding songs I've ever heard? No. But it's a credit to him to be able to write all this stuff, put it all together and release it, and have an album which genuinely I know for a fact I'm going to listen to more and more. Hopefully whilst not being distracted by chains being tangled together. But yeah, I really, really liked it. I think this is a fucking great album. So
yeah, just what you said about the production, I think like when you've got an album like this its strengths are the groove and the aggression and the precision, it's essential that you have a solid production to back it up. And Ailment certainly has that. Everything's well balanced. The guitars are weighty. The drums have got a real punch to them, especially the bass drums, which help kind of accent a lot of the kind of choppier riffs. The bass is quite understated, but it adds a kind of thickness to the whole thing. And I thought the vocals sat perfectly. A nice kind of gravelly tone that he's got.
Did he do the production as well?
I think he might have been involved in the production.
Yeah,
he's a producer. So
he's a producer as well. That's good.
Yeah.
That mean I'd be interested to know if he does a lot of production then out with his own stuff, because there's an objectivity there. That's what we were saying before. Is sometimes quality control can go amiss when it's your own thing. But the balance.
Probably why it took 7 years to come out. And then left it for 5, and then was like, oh, now I think I've given my ears enough of a rest. I can go back and listen to it.
I think sarcasm aside, Kyle. I think there is a truth to it. I think you need to be objective when it comes to your own production. I think that's probably
really
one of the
hard to be. Take it from me. It's so hard to be objective when it comes to your own stuff. So you have to leave it for a while, and I think 5 years is a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hand it to Kyle.
For me, if I had a band called Neil, my album would be called Armstrong.
This joke's got legs, man, honestly.
No, I loved it. It's actually like right up my alley. I love much stuff like Meshuggah and Gojira especially. I love those tones they get and all the crazy weird, just slightly off time signatures and slightly off riffs, and it's like things just pop in like, oh, I didn't expect that. But like you guys said, the first song was like, okay, this is interesting. The second one came, was like, okay, now we're getting on with it. And then my favourite song is like the fourth one. Was it DYS? This? I don't know if you say it or you say DYS. I don't know how the hell. But I mean, that's because the other ones were quite, not too similar, but this one came in and it was like really slow and really down tempo, and it was like, it's still heavy as hell. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. And that's the one that hooked me in to the whole album. And like you said, and as soon as you started singing, I was like, is that Max? Is it? I had to go and read the things again, and I was like, oh no, it's not, but is it? I'm still not sure.
This guest spot we brought Max in has lasted the entire album. How do we get him off? How do we tell him to go home?
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. It was. I mean, like you say, it was not the most original songs, but they definitely stand out enough to stand on their own and not just be a Meshuggah Gojira rip-off band. It's really good. And the fact that it's just two guys, when I read The Blood before I listened to it, Duncan...
all you're doing is proving to me that you have too much free time and you can read. That's literally it.
You have no idea. I was actually kind of like, oh, it's just two people? Is it going to be any good? My own band notwithstanding, one-man band. But it's really good. I mean, I don't know if my opinion was extra swayed by that fact, but I mean, just because it's just two people doing all of that stuff, multi-instrumentalist stuff is like, I mean, I know there's Trent Reznor and David Bowie and all this stuff out there too, but it's very rare to hear one person being able to do all that stuff and do it so well.
Yeah, and those genres as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you think about it, Nine Inch Nails benefits, that multi-instrumental kind of part benefits from being drum programmed and, you know, having a bass and playing guitars and keyboard. You know, there's a reason that works, but being able to do, I mean, I don't know if this is programmed drums, but you know, because you can never tell nowadays. The fucking
I was honestly not able to tell.
Kits out there.
I have to listen to it really closely.
It sounded organic to me. So I mean, the fact that dude can do that, he's clearly a talented person, and it's not just I can play all these different instruments, look at me do it. It's I can play all these instruments and write some great songs. So
and that's the thing. There wasn't like showboating on any instrument either. It's like okay, you can play it. It was like everything had its place, and there was no like overbearing, crazy, wanky guitar solo or anything like that. It was like everything just had its place and worked really well together. There was no sort of showing off. I mean, obviously it's showing off that you can write a song like that on your own, but it's beside the point. So yeah, that was a fantastic album. And tell me how to pronounce that song name, because I haven't got a clue.
All we're doing is alienating half the internet every time we pronounce something wrong. It makes me happy, because the other half are in the same boat because they can't pronounce it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like echoing a lot of what you guys have said. I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's a very riff-driven album, which is right up my street. Like, I love albums like this, and I love bands like Neil that keep things interesting. The riffs on each track, they're constantly twisting and turning. The rhythms quickly shift, and it keeps you on your toes the whole time. But what I also like was it never became like too just disjointed that it became messy. You know what I mean? Neil, they like to have riffs on each track that reappear, that give you almost that like sense of structure, even when they're throwing like an abundance of ideas at you. And those riffs that reoccur tend to be on the kind of groovier side, and they kind of add that feeling of balance. It stops the album from becoming overly technical for too long. And the tempo is the same. That something they switch around a lot as well. They alternate the tempo, even though it's a very groove-laden album. The tempo changes from track to track, very often during the tracks, and I think that also helps the album from becoming predictable or repetitive. Favorite tracks for me would be probably Abassonation and is it Bellicose? Really, just because I like the kind of sheer dissonance of those tracks. I love the choice of chords and the kind of jerky kind of rhythms. Both tracks were still very like loaded with grooves, but I liked the discordant sections that were kind of scattered through them. But also I really liked Watchful, which was one of the slower, kind of less technical tracks on the album. It had a bit of a darker, almost kind of sludgier tone at times, a more like kind of ominous feeling that it kind of put me in mind of bands like Botch or Nut. I wouldn't mind hearing more of that added to future albums. Maybe like a couple of tracks that kind of bring the tempo right down and add in more of that kind of dark kind of atmosphere. That's just my opinion. The band might be like, nah, Dave, go fuck yourself. But that aside,
we've all been there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really dug this. I think if you're looking for something that just pummels you from start to finish, then I think way. Yeah, absolutely. This might be the band for you. I would definitely recommend checking this one out. Rating wise, where are we sitting with the new album from Neil? I shall kick us off with a 4 out of 5 for me.
It's a 4 from me as well.
Nice.
4.5 out of 5.
Ooh.
Nice.
Kyle going in with a 4.5.
The only reason it's not getting 5 out of 5 is because they don't have a song called Diamond.
Just keeps on giving. Keeps on giving.
It does. It's got legs. Telling you.
Yep.
On the next album, Neil, just give us a song called DeGrasse Tyson.
Oh my!
Right, I'm going to stop.
Any more for any more? No. Sadaka? No. Any more for any more? No. That's a no. If you want to check these guys out, check them out at facebook.com/seek inside yourself. I'll put a link in the description below to their Facebook page. Duncan with the confused face. Check them out. This band are well worth checking out. The new album is called Ailment, and as I said, drops on the 16th of October. So a high recommendation from the three of us. Be sure to check it out and let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks once again for checking out our review, guys. Much appreciated. We'll be back with a new review very soon, but until then, take care. We'll speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.